Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Reserved Investments, and thank you for joining me. In today's video, we are going to be talking about 3 toy collectible companies that you should not be investing in for the long term. And make no mistake, this video is probably going to have some controversy simply because some of the toy companies that I'm going to be talking about today are still alive and well in the minds and hearts of a lot of the collectors out there that have a fondness and have a lot of memory towards the products that they made throughout their time spans. Now, all of these companies, for the most part, that we're going to be talking about today have gone under. They've gone bankrupt. They may have attempted a relaunch. There may be symbols of their existence still out there in toy shelves in some form, as we're going to get to. But if you're attempting to invest in any of these products over the long term, and when I say long term, I'm talking 10, 20, 30 years out, you may want to reconsider, because the demographics, the individuals that grew up remembering the products that these companies have created, are getting older and older by the day. So without further ado, I'm going to go right into this list. But make no mistake, I want to be very clear here. If you're somebody that just loves these items, if you're somebody that just wants to own them, you don't care about the financial aspect of these items, you don't care about the changing demographics that are going to affect demand for these items going forward, you continue to collect them. No harm, no foul, just as long as you're not trying to financially invest in them. On the other side of the proverbial coin, I do have to bring up that every time I do a video like this, I get attacked by a lot of resellers who do not understand what this channel is about. Again, this is a hardcore collectible finance channel. So if you're going to come into the comment section and tell me, hey, Sean, you don't understand. I'm a reseller. I went to a flea market, swap meet, garage sale, antique mart, and I found a collection of the items that you're telling me are dying. I bought them for $5 and I ended up selling them for hundreds of dollars online. I'm here to tell you, I'm well aware that if you're buying these items at a substantial discount below retail, you can still make a lot of money in this market. This video is for the hardcore collectors and investors that are paying a retail price for these items to try to invest in them over the long term. Again, we're talking 10, 20, 30 years out. So make no mistake, I do see all aspects of these items, the individuals, what I call participants in the overall trade that are going after them. My main concern is the people that are attempting to invest long term in these items. So let's start. The first company I want to talk about is the Aurora Plastic Company, also known to some of you guys as the Aurora Model Company. Now, if you don't know, the Aurora Plastic Company was formed back in 1950. They hit a lot of popularity by creating the excellent Universal Monster models that came out right around the 1950s, 1960s. They also made a lot of popular superhero models back in the 1960s that did extremely well. They are well known for their plastic toy models as well, plastic car models, a plethora of different models this company put out. Well, by 1980, this company already went belly up. They went bankrupt. There has never been a true full relaunch of this company. Hint, hint. Certain companies that we're going to be talking about in today's video, they did have a successful relaunch, or there are hints that the company did reorganize in a way where they can still market products to new generations. This is not one of those examples. Now, given the fact that a lot of baby boomers, especially those that watch this channel, have an emotional connection to the Aurora Model Company, I already know some of you are going to bring up the sale that occurred in March 2024, this month, on Hakes, which was a 2-pack factory sealed of these model kits that contained a Superman model and a Spider-Man model that was pretty much factory sealed together and sold at a unique specialty store back in the 1960s. That particular auction was on Hakes, and it ended for $54,516. That is also the image that you see on the thumbnail of this particular video. That is the product in question that I am talking about here. I am aware that the top 5% of this market is still going gangbusters. However, you cannot look at the strength of the top 5% of any collecting category and apply that to how the overall trajectory of that collecting category is going at present time. This applies to comic books, it applies to coins, it applies to any collecting category, whether it's on the antique side of the equation or the collectibles side of the overall equation. So if you are attempting to invest in Aurora plastic models from this particular company, as they were back in the day, your collecting dollars would serve you better if you are invested in different collecting markets over the long term. We are pretty much at the peak height of this market, in my opinion. Now, will there be exceptions to the rule? Could there be some rare item like this auction that I just mentioned on Hakes that continues to accelerate up in value over the years? Yes, that is possible. But overall, make no mistake, if you look at the demographics, it is primarily baby boomers and to a lesser extent, Gen Xers like myself that are flocking to buy Aurora plastic models, especially in factory sealed condition. So be very careful if you are investing in that market. Let's go to category 2. Category 2, I'm sure it's not going to make me any friends. The second category I want to talk about is the market for Mego toys and action figures. For those unaware, the Mego company came into existence in 1954. The Mego company produced a lot of loving, lot of nostalgia-driven toys and action figures all the way up through the 1970s. Then they made a major mistake. They passed on the lucrative Star Wars franchise licensing, which went to Kenner Toys. Kenner Toys, ironically, is the first toy line that I grew up with. I was born in 1976. I am 47 years of age at the filming of this particular video. And the first toys that I ever remember playing with were vintage Star Wars toys. That's why I have a lot of nostalgia towards that particular toy line in general. Well, Mego Toys could have actually won the licensing rights to produce those toys, and they ended up passing on it, and the rest is history. The company, the Mego company, pretty much went bankrupt, went belly up in 1983. They did reorganize. There was a small relaunch of the brand back in 2018. It was nothing significant. It was not on par with the original company. I want to make that very clear. Well, there are some particular Mego toys, a lot of their superhero line of action figures that were released back in the day. A lot of those items are highly coveted and collected today. The problem is, the core group of individuals that flock to those particular items as collectibles are either baby boomers or they're later age Gen Xers. We're talking people older than me. And again, I'm 47 years of age. And again, I already told you the first toy line that I vividly remember were vintage Star Wars figures. So people in their 50s and older are most likely the individuals that remember the original Mego toy lines. Now, are there certain Mego carded action figures that sell for tens of thousands of dollars on the secondary market even to this day? Yes, you can do a search right on Hake's auction site and you're going to come across some. Again, you cannot look at the strength of a collecting category based on the top 5% of that overall market. In my opinion, we are almost at the peak of Mego collecting as well. Mego collecting probably has another 10 years left in it, in all honesty. I do think that there may be some price appreciation across the board for at least another couple of years. Because again, this market isn't predominantly governed by baby boomers. There are some later age Gen Xers in the mix. That adds to these particular items having at least a little bit of stability for another 5 to 10 years, in my opinion. Now, last on our list today, and I'm sure that all of you, regardless of your opinion on this particular product as a collectible, are all going to agree with me. We got to talk about Marx Toys. So the Marx Toy Company was founded in 1919. The company ceased operations in 1980. So the Louis Marx Toy Company is probably one of the most well-known toy companies, especially if you are a baby boomer. Now, for those unaware, Marx Toys included everything from tin toys, toy soldiers, tin plate buildings, play sets, mechanical toys, toy guns, action figures, toy cars, trains, dollhouses. They made a plethora of toys back in the day, and their popularity really came to a head right after World War II, again, with the baby boom generation growing up on their particular toys. This is why when you get to the 1980s and even the early 1990s and you study the antiques and collectibles trade, you're going to see a massive run-up in demand for Marx Toys from that particular era, the 40s, 50s, and 60s. The reason for that, guys, is because the baby boom generation is getting into their prime in the 1980s and 90s. They have money to buy back their childhood, and they're going to the market, and they're starting to pay a premium for these particular toys that they grew up with. Well, today, in the year 2024, very few younger people, even people my age, Gen Xers, all the way down through millennials, all the way down to Gen Zers, they don't care about Marx Toys. Most of them in general don't even care to learn the history of this stuff anymore. As a result, this pretty much is a dying collecting category with few exceptions. If you look at a price history of common Marx toys, even if they are in near mint condition, even if they're factory sealed in certain instances, you will see that across the board, with few exceptions, it is pretty much, there's no volatility. It is almost dead and dying. There are certain instances where some of this stuff, every once in a while, something will come to light and it'll just pique the curiosity of older collectors and it'll get bidded up into the stratosphere. But this is the exception, not the norm. Be very careful if you are going after these particular items over the long term. Marx Toys is probably the most collecting category on this list that I urge you to have caution in if you are attempting to invest in this stuff. And it's very sad because the Marx Toy Company has the most exciting history. Out of all of these companies combined, literally, when we look at Marx Toys was in operation from 1919 all the way up through 1980, meaning they were in business 61 years. It's amazing how many products they released. It's fun to go back and explore the history of some of these companies. But again, I urge caution if you're trying to invest in these markets over the long term. Before we wrap up the video here, I do get asked this question often, and I want to make sure that I answer it head on. Sean, when you talk about Mego toys, when you talk about even Aurora plastic models, when we look at a product like Universal Monsters, when we look at superhero collectibles, whether they're made by Mego Toys, the action figure side, or even if we look at the rare models that I talked about that sold through Hakes for over $54,000, there's a lot of people that will tell you, because those items are rooted in pop culture history, meaning they're based on superheroes, those particular items will be a better investment overall if you're going to invest in items that were produced from these companies. I do agree with that. I just feel that at the present time, there are a lot of other different collecting categories where you're collecting or investing dollars would go farther over the long term. For instance, if we look at the demographics of Pokemon cards or Magic the Gathering or video games or Nike Air sneakers. Those particular markets are relatively young and the demographics are growing for those particular items. When we look at superheroes in general, comic books are not going to be able to keep up with the monumental price increases they've made over the past 5, 10, 15 years. The market is just not there. It is changing. That doesn't mean that comic books, superhero collectibles can't be a good investment. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying. They can be. But overall, the gains in those markets are not going to be as big as they once were. Let me use this as an example. Right now, if you want to go into the market and you want to buy a copy of House of Secrets 92, which is the first appearance of Swamp Thing, that was published by DC Comics. That book, in 9.2 condition alone, is going to set you back $9,000. Does anybody really believe, if you look at the price appreciation of that book just in the past 10 years, you're going to see those same gains that occurred in the past 10 years for a book like that going forward out another 10 years? I don't think it's going to be replicated again with the same amount of gains that we've seen in the past. That's why I urge caution. A lot of you guys are so dead set on, Sean, everybody knows Batman, everybody knows Superman, everybody knows the Universal monsters. You have to look at what the younger generations are flocking to. They are more or less flocking right now to Pokemon, Magic the Gathering to a lesser extent, Nike sneakers, video games, Nintendo, items of that nature. You need to have exposure to the speculative collectibles. Just like I tell you guys on the other side of the trade, you also should have some exposure to rare coins, currency, historical artifacts, and traditional antiques if you are trying to invest in these markets over the long term. That is how you maximize your dollars investing in the antiques and collectibles trade. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you so much for taking the time to view this video. Just a shameless plug, I do offer consulting services in the overall antiques and collectibles trade. As always, my email address is in the video description below. Thank you and have a good night.